Hello, this is part two in a two-part series on interpreting planetary nodes. In part one, I described what the planetary nodes are and why we suspect that they are important. And towards the bottom of this slide, I have a link to part one in case you didn't watch it and you want to watch that. You don't have to watch it. In this part two, I'm going to interpret the planetary nodes, what they mean astrologically. And this is based on a research study using extreme case sampling. Extreme case sampling is the quote miraculous unquote way to figure out many things in astrology. It's a revolutionary breakthrough because it's a way that we can jump into some topic, whatever it could be, a huge number of topics. I have basic things like what does Aries mean, what does Taurus mean, and to sort out what the zodiac signs actually do, we do these extreme case sampling studies. I have entire videos on what extreme case sampling is, why it's important, etc. But just to review the idea, the way you do extreme case sampling is, number one, you have to have a database of thousands of charts. In the Sirius 2.0 software, we have over 19,000 charts of famous people with what we call AA accuracy, which means from a birth certificate or birth record. So you need to have a lot of charts, at least some thousands of them. And number two, you have to have a way to search through those charts for what you want to look for. We call that an astrosignature. It could be one thing or a combination of things. So we use the astrosignature research feature that's in the Sirius 2.0 software. So this software is great because A, it has the data, B, it has the research features to go through the data. And we can search for something. So what we want to do is find the people who have a very strong planetary node. Let's use the Venus North Node as an example. What would make for a very strong Venus North Node? Well, conjunct a planet. We don't want to use the ascendant because the birth time could be off a little bit. What's a really important planet? Well, how about the sun? The sun's really important. So what we do is we have the software. We go into the Sirius 2.0 software. We tell it we want to research Sun conjunct Venus North Node. And it produces a list of those people. Now, here's the name of the game. This is how this works. Whoever comes out on the top of that list as the strongest Sun conjunct Venus North Node, we try to come up with an explanation of what that means in their chart. Anything we can come up with that's consistent. The trick to this is that you have to come up with something that they have in common for all of these top people in the list. You can't skip people or make excuses. This is what removes what we call selection bias, and it's very, very powerful. It makes your astrology much more evidence-based rather than cherry-picking what you want to see and so on. So very, very powerful. I'll show you very quickly how you do the research in the Sirius 2.0 software. All you do is you just click on this research icon. This is the Sirius 2.0 software. Click on the research icon. Click on astrosignature. And then it opens up a window with a lot of astrosignatures to choose from. And there's a button here for a new search or new astrosignature. So you click on this and you make a new one. It's really that simple. And I could call it, usually call it my, but let's just call it planetary nodes research, or just planetary nodes, or whatever you want to call it. And you can model it after one you've already have, or make a new one. I'll just make a new one. It says it made it. And then you have a list of things you can do, and we want to do an aspect. You can select aspect, midpoint, whatever. And I'll do sun. And you scroll down here, this very long list, dispositors and asteroids, Arabic parts. You can redefine what the asteroids and Arabic parts are. There's a button over here to change which ones are in this list. And then here they are, right here. Venus, North Node, geocentric, true. And down here is Venus, North Node, geocentric, mean. And then further down here is Venus, North Node, helio, true. And then there's a little note that this planetary nodes are only available for certain things, like they are available in the aspects. And I'm done. I set what my angle is, which would be conjunction, which is 0. 1 degree orb, applying and separating is fine. and click on OK and save the changes. I could click on insert new item and make a list of items, and I can weight them differently. There are entire tutorial videos on how to do the research, but that's the basic idea of how it's done. As I mentioned in part 1 of this series, there's a geo node and there's a helio node, and what you're seeing here, there's also a true and mean node. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Anyway, I would save my changes, and then save my changes, and then there it is, planetary nodes, my planetary nodes research. And then I click on begin analysis. I can here's my accuracy rating. I could say I only want AA data, and there's a little thing here for names only. This leaves out data that doesn't have a name, such as some of the research data that's in there, like Galco data where it doesn't have a person's name. And you can select the category. You can research all data or just some category of data. That's it. You click begin analysis, and then it produces the listing of the results. And there's all kinds of cool things you can do with the anding and oring, and organize the way it organizes by strongest things. And anyway, that's all described in other videos. But basically, you just run the research, you get the results, and now we have to try to explain them and try to come up with a theory. And here's my interpretation. In looking at these people who have the strongest Sun conjunct Venus North node, I did not find that they are more obviously Venusian than other people. I thought, they have Sun conjunct the Venus North node. Maybe they're Venusian. Maybe they're beautiful. Maybe they're artists. Maybe they're very romantic. That does not appear to be true. So this is the power of extreme case sampling. We've got the strongest Venus North node people. We have to come up with an idea that fits. So that didn't work. Did they seem more public? Did they gain fame in some kind of Venusian way? Any kind of Venusian way? That does not appear to be true. Now, what I did notice is that if we think of the North Node, the Venus North Node, as the beginning of a Venus zodiac, as a 0 Aries point, and there's a reason for thinking that, because planetary nodes are intersections of great circles with the ecliptic plane. I explained this in part 1, and how the tropical 0 Aries is where a great circle intersects the ecliptic plane. The beginning of the houses, the ascendant, is where a great circle intersects the ecliptic plane. And if I think of the North Node of Venus as the beginning of a Venus zodiac, that works. So this is what's so cool about extreme case sampling, is I can look at the extreme people and they must exhibit some quality in common that reflects the meaning of what I'm researching. So, and you can make any argument you want. You could produce this listing, and maybe you'll come up with a better idea than what I came up with. But what's so exciting about this is now we have some data to refer to, rather than just whatever anecdotal evidence or belief we have, or we pick out some famous person that happens to fit our theory. We've anchored or grounded our ideas in the actual data. And if somebody who has an extreme exact Sun conjunct Venus doesn't have the qualities, then we know we don't need to do more advanced research, as I explain in the videos on extreme case sampling. So anyway, the bottom line is, as I have here at the bottom on this slide, that what I found is that I'm going to propose that the 0 Aries point, the beginning of a zodiac, has a very strong Aries quality. This is something I've always believed, for over 30 years, is if somebody has a planet right at 0 Taurus, or right at 0 Gemini, right at 0 Cancer, if they have a planet at 0 Cancer, I personally think it has a very strong Cancer quality. It's just a theory I've had for decades, and it appears to work in this case, that the Sun conjunct the Venus North Node gives a very strong Venus and Aries quality, exclamation point. That's it. That's my theory of planetary nodes. Let me say it again. A planet conjunct the Venus North Node, if it's conjunct with a very, very small orbit, is almost exactly at that 0 Aries point, it's going to have a very strong Venus and Aries quality, because it is at the beginning of Aries in a Venus zodiac. So I'm proposing that every planet creates its own planetary zodiac. Here's an example. This is, let me close this research thing I was showing you. This is the chart of Dave Navarro. He's a singer, guitar player, and songwriter, rock and roll groups. He was in the group Red Hot Chili Peppers and some other groups. He happened to come out as I think it was the third highest out of over 19,000 people. Well, I don't have a lot of biographical information for all of them, but I'd say probably over 10,000 people that we have biographical information for, and a recorded birth time. He's among the top 3 or 4 for Sun conjunct Venus North Node, and look at it, it's a 2-minute orb. Here's the Sun at 16 Gemini 21, here's the Venus North Node, 16 Gemini 23, only a 2-minute orb. So what we believe is that he must in some way exhibit strong Venus North Node qualities, whatever that means. Now here's an interesting thing I didn't think of ahead of time, but as I did the research I noticed. Again, I'm in the Series 2.0 software. I'm going to right click, which is a fast way to get to your settings, and I'm going to click on the Customize button. And then I'm going to click on this button here for asteroids, lots, nodes. This is where we add asteroids, the lots, also known as Arabic parts, nodes, things like that, to the chart wheel. So I'll click on this. And then down here is where I add Arabic parts, and here I add the planet nodes. And it's checked. If I uncheck it, boink, they're gone. So I love this interactivity. You can use this not only for permanent settings for your wheel, but just for playing around. Maybe you don't usually want the nodes, but you just want to see them. You can put them in there and see exactly what they're doing. So it's fantastic. Once you get used to the software, just right-click, customize, click on the button, uncheck, put things in and out of the wheel. It's wonderful. Now, you'll see a choice for Geo or Helio. Now, what I didn't realize before I did the research, but makes sense once I got going with this, is that if a planetary node is conjunct the Sun, it doesn't matter whether you select Geo or Helio. Let me give you an example. I'm going to go from Helio to Geo. I'll explain this osculating in a minute. But I'm going to go from Helio to Geo, and Venus won't change. But let's take another planetary node. Let's say Mars at 19 degrees Taurus and Mercury at 17. Can we remember that? Mercury at 17, Mars at 19 Taurus. I'm going to click on Geo, change it from Helio to Geo. And now Mercury went from 17 Taurus to 19 Gemini. Mars went from 19 Taurus to 0 Gemini. They've moved 10, 20, 30 degrees, however far they've moved. They've moved a lot. Where did Venus move? The Venus North Node moved 1 minute. It's now 1 minute closer to the Sun using Geo versus Helio. It makes essentially almost no difference. So if a planet if a planetary node is conjunct the Sun, it doesn't matter whether we have Geo or Helio, and that happens to be very convenient for our research, because as I explained in part 1 of the series, we don't know whether to use a Geo or a Helio node. Well, if we're studying Sun conjunct the planetary node, they're going to be the same. And if both are important, suppose Geo and Helio are important, this is going to be doubly important because they're both there. So Dave Navarro is clearly a Sun-Venus node guy, and it doesn't matter whether you use the Geo node or the Helio node or use both. If any kind of planetary node means anything, he is Mr. Venus planetary node to an extreme, much more than anybody else. Now this osculating means true. So you have a true and a mean node, just like you have for the moon. And I strongly believe in the true node. I have a tutorial video on that and why the true node is better. So leave this checked. And for our research, it doesn't matter whether we use Geo or Helio. I'll just leave it on Helio. But for our research for Sun conjunct the Venus North Node, which is the first research I did, doesn't matter what I select. So I'll just get out of all this, and there's our chart. Okay, now here is the interpretation, a fairly long, detailed interpretation for Sun conjunct Venus North Node. Just like you can get a computerized printout of an interpretation, if we wanted to create a computerized interpretation that interpreted planets, conjunct, planetary nodes, this could be my interpretation for Sun conjunct Venus North Node. I'll read you the whole thing. The Sun conjunct Venus North Node means the person has his or her own idea of what is beautiful and how to find or acquire beauty. They do not follow prevailing ideas of what is beautiful and how to attain it. They go off on their own and may defy social standards, perhaps even break the law, or their behavior may make a strong social statement about what we can regard as beautiful. Romantic relationships, marriages, the way that wealth is achieved, play an important part in the person's life. And the reason why wealth is important is because when you have money, that enables you to get the finer things, bring more beauty into your life. If you're at say like a lower middle class income, you've got a roof over your head, you've got food, you can't get a fancy musical instrument or decorate your house and with the finest things and bring get a beautiful paintings or whatever you want to get. If you have money, you can. Money does a lot of things. One thing it does is allow you to create whatever beauty you want to create. So I think the essence of Venus, my own personal opinions, has to do with beauty, and money often gets involved because it liberates us to pursue the beauty. And with this incredibly powerful Aries impact on the Sun, this Venus and Aries impact, it gives a vitality and a vigor to get what they want, to make it. And it will incline them to sometimes extreme behavior and sometimes wealth in order to create this beautiful world around them rather than live in a plain world. Okay, so to continue with what I wrote here. There's a feeling of needing to find one's own way and a feeling of needing to be authentic and responsible to oneself to find what is beautiful and fulfilling. The Sun conjunct the Venus North Node is also passionate and vigorous. These people do not hold back. They push to the limits and find intense beauty and stunning effects, whether it is the effects derived from wealth or looking out over one of the Earth's highest mountain peaks with one's wife. We're going to see that one of the people with Sun conjunct Venus North Node is a mountain climber. His wife is a mountain climber. So they share this. They're like soulmates on these explorations, on these journeys and adventures into what we could imagine must be stunning, awesome beauty that they share together. So there is a vitality in the way that the person pursues their passions and their quest to move outside the normal boundaries of what we regard as aesthetically pleasing, romantic, and fulfilling. This is the Aries quality of going your own way, as I explained in the tutorial video on Aries. Okay, so I mentioned Dave Navarro, Sun conjunct Venus North Node with a 2-minute orb. So he's you might say the king of Venus North Node. He must exhibit these qualities. I'm mentioning Dave Navarro because he's a person who's contemporary that some of you may know. You can read his biography. You can listen to his music. You can learn more about him than some of his historical figures and get a better feeling for who he is. Okay, but he wasn't number one. The number one person is Raul Gardini. By number one, I mean he has Sun conjunct Venus North Node, even closer orb than Dave Navarro, less than a 2-minute orb. It was probably exact. I'm not going to bring up all these charts, otherwise I'll be here all day. I don't want this to be too long. But if you pull up his chart, and all this data is included in the Series 2.0 software, you can just go into the data entry screen, pull up Gardini, you'll see Gardini, Raul, and turn on that feature to see the nodes, and you'll see Sun conjunct Venus North Node exact, and it won't matter whether you do Geo or Helio. Okay, so what's the deal with Raul Gardini? He's an Italian financier. He was involved in a scandal where he was accused of having illegal money. During the scandal, he shot himself to death in his Milan apartment bedroom. As I mentioned before, money can bring elegance and beauty that those who are living at a lower economic level do not have. The grace, pleasure, and fulfillment of beauty can be increased with money. Thus, money is often a symptom of Venus. It's a way to get to that beauty. Aries goes its own way. Aries has the courage to break from the usual way of doing things. Sometimes Aries is unethical. It can be unethical, but down deep the person wants to be authentic. The story of Raul Gardini, going your own way, making that money, creating your own life, forging ahead, and then realizing that you're not completely honest, probably having some regret, which psychologists tell us is often involved in suicide. You don't just commit suicide just because you're frustrated. There's something that you dislike inside yourself. I'm going to suggest that that's going on to some extent with him. And then there's the suicide. This is an extreme mythic story of Aries. The going your own way, in this case for money, to have this beauty and elegance in your life, and then going your own way, but in this case not honest all the way down, regret, and then suicide. Okay, now here's another person, Wayne Bay. He ended up in the database because he made the news when he divorced from his wife. His wife got custody of their 2-year-old daughter. He took the daughter, he illegally abducts her, goes from the United States to Canada. He's found, and fairly quickly the daughter's returned to the mom. That's quite literally Venus with a strong Aries impact, describing his son, his life. His life is about creating the beauty the way he wants it, and again, the illegal behavior, the self-willed energy of Aries to do what they think is right and what they deserve, and even if it goes against the law of the land. Okay. Third person is Dave Navarro. He was the third strongest aspect, in other words, smallest orb of Sun conjunct Venus North Node, guitarist for the Red Hot Chili Peppers and other groups. A little background to him: his mother was murdered by his boyfriend when he was young. He became a heroin addict and addicted to other drugs. He married and divorced 3 times. Now, keep in mind that everything in the chart only does a little bit. Don't try to generalize his Sun conjunct Venus North Node to everything in his life. I think what's consistent with all of these people who have Sun conjunct Venus North Node almost exactly is this self-willed way of finding beauty in their lives. If you look at the pictures of Dave Navarro, I didn't bring up a website to do that. You'll see, well, let me go ahead and do it really quickly. Let me just bring up a browser. And you're going to see that he dresses in a sharp way. He's very charismatic. He looks intriguing. He has kind of a rugged look, but at the same time, there's almost a feminine quality to it at the same time. It's a kind of a unique, or at least unusual look. I'm just going to put here Dave Navarro. Just Google his name, and there's a picture of him, wearing glasses, maybe looking slightly on the more scholastic side of things. Let's click on the Wikipedia article, and here's another picture of him. And you see what I mean about he's got these sharp features. He looks very physically fit, probably somewhat muscular, good-looking guy, somewhat charismatic, but there's a feminine touch to it. The way he's got straight hair, looks like he's almost using some eyeliner in this particular case for his eyes. This bringing beauty into your life in your own way. It's not necessarily unique. It's not done for the purpose of being rebellious. It's just to find your own way, however you want to do it. There is an intensity, a fierceness to Aries, to have the courage to go their own way. He dresses very sharp, not all the time. I saw some pictures of him with jeans and a t-shirt, but he has a strong artistic embellishment to his own personal look. He has a charismatic look. He has the tattoos, physically fit, a feeling of masculinity, but the hair and some appears to be enhancing of his eyes give a pretty look at the same time. Very interesting. I think this has a lot to do with the Sun at 0 Aries, inclining him to bring beauty into his life in his own way, different from most people. And again, remember, we can't get a tremendous amount of information from one thing in the chart. What we're trying to see is, does the Venus planetary node have any meaning at all? And to find out if it does, we're going to see if those people with Sun conjunct Venus planet, the Venus planetary node, the Venus North Node specifically, have something in common. And I think you can make a good argument that all of them go their own way. make their own beauty, find their fulfillment with beauty and romance in their life, very individually. They don't follow the herd. Now this guy, he really doesn't follow the herd in one of the most malicious and negative ways. He's a thief and a rapist who makes an enormous amount of money. He's the second case out of 4 people who make a huge amount of money illegally. And in this case, a very cruel way. I don't think cruelty is indicated by Sun Conjunct North Node, but it does incline you to have the strength, the individuality to listen to yourself for better or worse. So something else in his chart led to his hostility or some experiences in his life, combines with the Sun Conjunct the North Node to produce this result of going his own way, to bring fulfillment, romantic fulfillment, beauty. He must have been very frustrated and twisted to become this malicious, but that's what happened. So I think you can make a good argument that all 4 people go their own way, even if it means breaking the law, to get what they want in their lives. Now, I've got 3 more people. Al Chechi, 3rd person who's very wealthy. 3 out of 5 noted specifically for their wealth. He's a businessman who made a fortune. He ran unsuccessfully for governor of California as a Democrat. He campaigned for more money for education. So he's obviously has much, higher vision, a healthier outlook on life. He's got good intentions. He's now a political independent, and obviously using his wealth with better intentions. At least he's not a rapist and a murderer. So but again, I'm going to assume, and it seems to fit the little bit we know about him, that he's got this need to make his own way, to get this beauty into his life, to do what needs to be done. He's not going to sit by. There's a vitality, an energy, a passion that the nodes give. And that's something that people talk about, the nodes giving this huge energy boost, and I think that that's true. It's not an energy boost that's necessarily going to make you a public figure, have an impact, or being a symbol to the public, or have that kind of impact. I don't see that, but I do see this self-determination, and in this case with Venus North Node, it means the self-determination to go their own way, and especially self-determination because it is that 0 Aries point, if the planet is really, really close to that node. 2 other people who scored very high, 6th highest in our list, also with an extremely small orb of Sun Conjunct the Venus North Node, is a baseball player, Thurman Munson. Now, he's a baseball player, but with, I think, a more interesting story than most baseball players. First of all, he's really exceptional. He wins all kinds of awards. He was a catcher for the New York Yankees. And in the Wikipedia article on him, it says he was the heart and soul of the team. Here again, we see the passion of the North Node. Now, his life ends abruptly. He dies in an airplane crash trying to land his airplane. He was still young enough to be a player. It cut his career and his life short. So there's some sense again of the passion, the beauty that he wants in his life. Apparently, he was homesick for his home, which was, where was it, in Ohio or something, while he was playing in New York, and he used to go home a lot. I think that's one reason why he had a little plane to be able to get back. So this love, to have that in his life the way he wants it, and not to be, always on the road, etc., but to get back to his beautiful home. I think he was married too, but in any case, we can make an argument that it seems to fit his life pretty well. And the last one, I stopped after 7 because I noticed the orb got much bigger after the first 7. It was like 5 or 10 minutes bigger orb, so I stopped after the 7th one, who has birth time accuracy. Bradford Washburn, I mentioned him earlier. He's an American explorer, mountaineer, cartographer, honeymooned with his wife, making the first ascent of Mount Bertha together. Washburn is also passionate, fully alive, and engaged in life, which is what we seem to see with these nodes. Fully alive, engaged in life. And I think he went his own way. He was an explorer, and there's a romantic quality to it. he doesn't just do it by himself. He's doing it with his wife very often, who shares the same passion, and he honeymoons, ascending this mountain. So his own beauty, his own revelation of romance and the fulfillment of this awesome beauty in his life. So I think you can make a good argument that all 7 people have this quality in their lives. I think it's more difficult to argue that they are public figures or some other interpretation of what the nodes might mean. Okay. Then I was interested, because it seemed to give a lot of energy, what would happen with the Mars North Node? So I looked at that, and very interestingly, the people with Sun conjunct Mars North Node are not necessarily aggressive, muscular or something like that. Some of them are pacifists. They can be dropouts. They choose an unexpected direction in life. So I think that this is the quality of the node. When a planet is very, very tightly conjunct that node, they are independent. It's a 0 Aries quality. They go their own way. They do have this boost of energy, and they carve a new path. But it can be subtle in the sense that it's not necessarily a physical energy or a brashness or anything like that. They sometimes even choose a lifestyle that has competition, that avoids competition and emphasizes cooperation. They go their own way. They don't just follow what was laid out for them. They sometimes choose a different kind of path from the norm. We see that with the Venus also, the mountaineering, the physical appearance of Dave Navarro, etc. They go their own way. The ability to even be to be inclined to criminal activity. So here are the top people with Sun conjunct Mars North Node. They are all independent, self-motivated, self-willed people, not abrasively so usually, but they're self-made individuals who have their own way of thinking and their own way of putting things together. Person with the strongest one is Marina Vladi, French actress. She was married 3 times. One time to Soviet singer and songwriter Vladimir Vyatsky, who's also a well-known person. She participated in political protests, published a book about the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. She's done a one-woman show. She created her own life. When she was married to Vyatsky, he lived in Moscow, she lived in Paris. She would fly very often back to Moscow to be with him. It was a very passionate relationship, is what everybody reports. There was some stress there because she had her career in Paris, he had his in Moscow. To make your own life, live a passionate life, choose her own way, be a self-determined person. And it's not conspicuous. Aries is usually not conspicuous. They're not there to show off. They just want to go their own way. They often leave the crowd. Self-determination. In her case, I don't think it's conspicuous, but I think it's something ingrained in her life. With Cornelius Pellinars, he was a Dutch cyclist and a coach. Well, think about cycling. You're on that bicycle. You did road cycling, on the road. The determination, the fortitude, the being on your own. It's more of a solo kind of sport in the sense that it's you and your bike, and challenging yourself to go to new levels. There's an Aries kind of quality, this Mars North Node conjunct Sun, this individuals and this going their own way. Richie Furay, rock and roll singer, guitarist, and songwriter. He's the 3rd strongest Sun conjunct Mars North Node. He's not aggressive. He's not a fighter. He's not, like this muscular, aggressive sort of person. So that does not work. What does seem to work is independent path in life. He was a member of the group Buffalo Springfield and other groups. In 1983, he quits rock music. I think he's kind of older, so maybe not surprising he would quit. But anyway, became a minister, a Christian minister. Not many rock musicians later become Christian ministers. He appears to have some of the strong Aries traits, following your own way. That's the consistent thing. They just go off in some direction you don't anticipate because they're thinking deeply about what's really important, what they really want to do. So it's a quiet self-determination. here's the other people in my list. You can pause this if you want to read these names. But one name caught my name, Rick Steves. I've noticed him. He's got books out on travel. I've seen him on TV a few times. You might be familiar with him. Popular person. He's a contemporary person that I recognize. So he's not the 4th, 5th, or 6th, but I just pulled him out of this list. You can only spend so much time doing this research, and that's one of the things. If we could really advance astrology by people taking the time to do what I've done, take it to the next step, take the time to look up these biographies. Real research and development of understanding takes real work and effort and time and dedication. So anyway, just browsing through this relatively quickly, I noticed Rick Steves, he's again not an aggressive person. He very quietly, he's almost passively goes to common places and also less common places. I saw a show of him once where he was showing Iran, and it's kind of a controversial place, and he presents it in a more welcoming way, showing how it's not so different from the rest of the world. So he takes you to common and uncommon places to visit, experience, and appreciate. So Aries is sincere and often simple or understated because of its focus on being authentic. He also has a huge 9th harmonic pattern, and I think it's the harmonic patterns that really describe it, and it fits him. But he's sort of a very gentle, more easygoing sort of person. So what does the Mars North Node mean anything? One of the beautiful things about this extreme case sampling is there's no excuses. If we can't make sense of Rick Steves or other people who have Sun conjunct Mars North Node with a very small orb, there's no hope that it's going to work. You can't just say, oh, gee, I don't know, and drop it. Then you're dropping the whole topic. You can drop it, but it means you've given up on making sense of the planetary nodes. The only way that I can make sense of them is that it's a orientation towards life, to choose your own way, and with Mars, it does not seem to bring the classic images of Mars as a physical warrior, but a more subtle emphasis on choosing your own way in life. That's a theory that fits the data, and that's the thing I want to emphasize. That I think we're going to make progress in astrology by having a more evidence-based approach. And what I've done here is present a reasonable idea of what the planetary nodes might mean based on some real data. I did one more thing. I looked at Venus conjunct the Helio North Node. Once you get away from the node conjunct the Sun, we have to choose between Helio and Geo. I was just kind of curious. And for Venus conjunct the Helio North Node, our strongest person, the person with the smallest orb for Venus conjunct the Venus node. I thought, wow, what does that do? The strongest person was a professor of electrical engineering, not obviously Venusian. Next one was a German Nazi official who was a leading person who spread Nazi propaganda, but he did surrender the city of Berlin to the Soviet Union against the will of Joseph Goebbels, I guess you pronounce his name. Next guy is a baseball player, a French singer, a French actress, a Dutch lawyer, journalist, and revolutionary, charismatic leader of the Dutch Party. So just looking this over, the strongest Venus conjunct Venus Helio node, if the Helio node is important, my conclusion is that the Venus Helio North Node does not give extreme or obvious traits. If we look at the North Node at 0 Aries in a Venus zodiac, then these people have Venus at 0 Aries in the Venus zodiac, which indicates the person has his own idea of beauty but does not give conspicuous or strong personality traits or behaviors. So it may be that planetary nodes have some effect, but it's not so dominant and clear and powerful as other things that we analyze in the chart. That's what I'm concluding. Some people interpret the nodes more as a karmic development. That can be explored, because when you do look at it as more of a karmic issues, those don't necessarily show up as clear personality traits, directions of life. That's something that can be explored. I would suggest if you explore it with this data, not just with whatever chart of a client or a famous person you run into, but if we use a more data-driven approach, we can come up with ideas that might really possibly be viable. And this is one of the big problems in astrology is you can just find cases to support whatever you want. So here's some solid data. If you have the software, you can run this yourself and produce the full listing and work with it and come up with ideas. So that's my final point here I have in bold yellow at the bottom. We have data on which to build a more evidence-based understanding of astrology. And what I've done here is present a reasonable idea of what the planetary nodes actually do that fits the data well. So that's it, my friends. People have been talking about planetary nodes for a long time with a lot of different ideas floating around out there. A lot of people are curious about them. Well, why not sort it out? So I've jumped in there to do this kind of research. I encourage you to consider, if you have a question about something, use that astro signature feature, pull out the top people, and it's a qualitative research. There's no statistics involved. You just pull out those people and see if you can come up with something that they have in common. See if you can develop a theory. This is qualitative research to develop solid theories, and it removes selection bias and gives us a solid foundation for developing ideas. So my conclusion specifically about planetary nodes, I think they do work, and I've got an idea of how they work. They don't seem to be overwhelmingly powerful, but they do seem interesting. And what I'm also going to be looking at, as I look at charts in general, is when a planet is some multiple of 30 degrees from the node. So if a planet is 30, 60, 90, 120 degrees from a planetary node, I'm getting the impression that it's conjunct the cusp of the next zodiac sign in that zodiac created by the node. So this is opening up some interesting areas to explore and see if they continue to be valuable and interesting. We've made a dent, you might say. We've made an inroad. We've got some development for understanding how planetary nodes might really work, an idea that's been thrown around for decades, and now at last, using these 21st century information tools, we can make some real progress in sorting out if they're really really useful in our astrological work. That's it, my friends. Thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.